Welcome everybody to today's event. We're really excited about this week's show. I don't know how our marketing people do it, but it seems like there's always something really great that they come up with that we're able to share with you, our customers and dealers. Today is no exception. We're fortunate today to have with us somebody who's a brand partner. In the firearms world, it seems like a lot of companies naturally work very, very well together. One company's products complement another company's products. And for us, among the other companies that we work with, we've chosen Warne to offer some of our scope mounting hardware with. And today we're lucky enough to have one of the leaders in that company, Randy Parks, with us today. So we'll welcome Randy to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. Big Christensen fan, big shooter. So we're still.
And for my part, Randy, I told you this as we've talked before. I was using Warne bases and rings way before I worked for Christensen and before I met Randy Parks. So you guys do a really, really great job, and it was good for me to have this partnership formed and for us to be able to have your stuff. So I liked your stuff even before we worked here. So
good, thanks. Me too. I owned Warne before I started here, and that was almost 11 years ago. So this is just a fantastic position that I've kind of fell into one day and haven't looked back. Love it.
That sounds familiar. I was raising and lowering the flag and emptying the trash when I fell into this position. So
nice.
It's worked out well for both of us.
Yes. Great industry.
So part of the reason, Randy, I feel like we're a good match for you and you for us is the quality that goes into your products. And as a representative of the company, I've spent a lot of time on the phone. And I've told people that, in my opinion, at the price point that you guys' stuff is at, it's just very, very hard to beat the quality that you guys have at the price point you're able to bring your stuff to market.
Yeah.
Why is that possible for you guys, and how do you do it as a company?
So that's all we do, our scope mounts. First of all, we don't make any optics, we don't make any firearms, and we have engineers that are still working with the company that worked for Jack Warne when it was Kimber of Oregon, and they were making firearms at the time and those really high-end scope mounts. But as we've moved through, our Maxima line, which is our steel line, we've just kind of mastered that whole scenario. So it's been a pretty easy transition for us. We've added a lot of new SKUs lately, including some co-branded SKUs like for Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's all we do. It's all made in the USA. So it's hard to be competitive with the offshore market, but we don't really look at the offshore market as a pricing strategy. So we try and make it at the best price point we can for all shooters, whether you're a plinker or whether you're way out there and doing, setting up a $10,000 long range gun. So yeah.
One of the things you bring up, Randy, in my opinion, is one of the most important points for us, and that is made in America. Our Christensen firearms are made under the roof right here in downtown Gunnison, Utah. You've toured the factory, you've seen where your guns were made. And for us, that's a big thing. It's important to our company. It's one of our priorities to have American-made products. So kudos to you guys.
Yep.
In the company here at Christensen Arms, Randy, we've, especially the last 5 years or so, we have improved and made a lot of advancements in manufacturing techniques. We even have a couple of robots out on our floor that do repetitive, easy things to do. So our production is increased because of our ability to use new innovative techniques. Have you guys done that?
We have, yeah. We've got some, we call them cobots because they co-tend a CNC machine. They can load and unload the raw material and then pull out basically the machined part and load another one in. And we can have the operators just kind of stand back and monitor what they're doing. So it's been a huge difference, and the throughput's gone way up. Plus, they work 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when you have a machine properly set up and running right, as overseen by a person, it seems like you get repeatable, consistent quality too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
The other thing I really like about your company, besides the Made in America thing, is that's all you make. You don't make widgets and whatever else. You guys make hardware to mount a quality optic to a quality firearm.
Correct. Yeah. if it's not round, it kind of throws manufacturing for a little loop. We've got a bipod and we've got some other product, but in the beginning, it was scope rings, and bases, right? And so as we expand, the engineers have had to learn a lot, and they've done a great job in developing some really cool products that are not just round.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience, preliminarily, your Warne bipod is going to be a very, very good product for you guys. You guys did a lot of things absolutely dead perfect on that bipod, and I enjoy the one I have, and a lot of other shooters are going to enjoy it as it becomes available to them. So
awesome, good. Great
product.
Thank you.
Well, the way we're going to kind of run the show, Randy, by way of introduction, we'll talk about some talking points, you and I, and then at the end of it, we've even got a few questions that our viewers, people that are interested in our stuff, both Christensen and Warne, have pushed up to us. And so if that sounds good to you, we'll just kind of jump right into it a little bit. And one of the things that we get here at the factory, and you probably get on your customer helpline, is how do I choose the correct rifle scope ring mounts? What goes into that decision?
When we get that call in, we usually try and just, qualify the customer. What do they want to do with it? Do they want to shoot long range precision? Do they want to hunt? Do they want to plank? Is it an AR or is it a bolt style gun? So once we kind of understand what they want to do and hopefully what optic they want to run, we kind of guide them down a couple different options. And usually the option is a pick rail or a two-piece base set.
The intended purpose of the rifle probably is one of the biggest factors in making sure they get the right hardware on their gun.
Right.
What would work well for one application doesn't always translate well into something else. For example, if you want to be a 1,000-yard F-class shooter, that's a different mount than, say, something for a modern sporting rifle or an AR platform rifle.
100% different, and it's a different optic, it's a different gun, it's a different mindset, and so they've really got to buy everything. You're not going to buy a Ford Pinto to tow a trailer, right? So you just got to get the right gear right up front.
Yep. So those are all important things to consider. And most customers know what they want to do with their rifle. They just want a little more expertise in what ring would work the very best for them. Another question we get a lot here, and it's almost everybody that buys a rifle, if it's been a while since they set that rifle up, they're curious about how to determine the proper ring height. Nobody wants to go to the store and buy 4 ring heights and then take 3 of them back when they trial and error find out the one that's going to work for them.
Right. Yeah. It's a tough one, but there's a little mathematical formula that we use to help determine them. Ring height's really distinguished by the scope tube diameter and the objective diameter. Those two are going to dictate ring height, with the exception of an AR platformer, an MSR, modern sporting rifle. Those typically run all at the same height because that's how that gun ergonomically was designed when it still had a carry handle and a front piece.
Yep. And for that reason, your cantilever mount that we offer just as universally probably the best answer to that question. So the things that drive the proper ring height, and everybody wants the scope as low as they can get it, so they have the proper cheek weld. On the MPR, we're fortunate because the MPR, you can raise and lower cheek height, comb height, to match your optic to a certain degree. But you're right, the thing that determines how high your rings need to be is the objective bell diameter, and sometimes even if you're going to run scope caps. And one of the things that used to be an issue, not so much anymore, on the ocular bell, are we going to run into bolt handle clearance if the scope is too low? And the other thing, Randy, we've been sensitive to being a firearms manufacturer, if they don't have the proper ring height on their firearm and they have a huge garbage can windage turret on their scope, the optic needs to be high enough out of the way that spent case has a clear path to exit the receiver without hitting that turret.
Right.
And so there's a lot of moving pieces of that puzzle, but it is possible to get the right ring height if you just do your due diligence and make a good decision. So, but the single biggest factor would be the objective bell diameter for sure.
First rifle I bought a 3-9x50 because it was going to be better than a 3-9x40. And when I got home, I went right back to the store and bought high rings because my mediums didn't work. So, but there isn't a low, medium, high that equates to the objective. It depends on whether it's bases or a rail, or exactly like your modern sporting rifle. And you know, on our website, we have a finder that just says, I have a 30 millimeter scope and a 56 cal, and it comes back with a ring height suggestion. But to be fair, most people don't actually trust it, so they call us or email us anyway. But there is a way to figure it out, and it all has to do with radiuses, and you just start stacking all of the components you're looking at together. They all have a dimension, and you'll get to a point where you can clear the barrel. On most bolt guns, all you want to do is clear the barrel and stay as low as possible.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And by gosh, with everything you guys make, it is possible to find the right solution to that. So, and especially if they're willing to do their due diligence and just do a little research, they can find the right ring height for their application.
Absolutely.
When we talk about ring height, that's one thing, and then we've discussed a little bit too about the appropriateness based on the intended purpose of the optic. Let's talk just a little bit, Randy, if we can, about one of the rings that we have co-branded with you. It's your PRSR Tactical HD ring set. That's a great set of rings. I've got one open here on the bench. It's got a very wide. It's got 3 fasteners, 3 screws that hold the caps. It's got the provision for a scope level, and it even has. It's been machined to accept your range data card holder.
Yep.
So those rings would be a good match for what type of shooter for you guys, basically?
I would say long range precision shooter, or somebody with a really heavy recoiling rifle and a really heavy scope. That inertia needs more surface to grab a hold of the scope tube. So those rings, compared to your ultralights, are about just a little over 70% more surface contact for the pair of rings than your lightweights, or than like my Mountain Tech. So a lot more surface area means a lot more friction, and that's going to hold it up. I wouldn't always use them on a ridgeline. You know, my ridgeline's in 6.5 PRC, and it's a pure hunting rifle with a reasonably small lightweight scope, and it could be overkill. But then I also know in the firearms industry, there is no such thing as overkill. I mean, people go crazy, you know. That's why they make, you know, 375s and 460s. So
and even 500, yep.
Right.
So we've got those rings mounted on this modern precision rifle. It's pretty much a long range precision rifle for us with the range data card holder. That's a pretty good match for that rifle right there.
That's a perfect match for that rifle. That's exactly what you would anticipate. You're going to have a big beefy scope on it. It's going to be a 5-25 or a 4-27, or, you know, one of those big magic numbers, 34 millimeter tubes. So yeah, it's a huge scope, and it's on a really light gun that has the ability to have some recoil if you are not running a brake. So yeah.
And a lot of those long range precision guys will have an optic that they've chosen that weighs a few more ounces than the standard medium weight hunting optic. And so for those reasons, that ring is just an excellent choice. And it's a great addition to your lineup. We sell a lot of those. It's a great answer to the question. But like you mentioned, on occasion, you just don't need quite that much ring. Maybe you don't want quite that much weight. You've got a very light optic, and you care more about ounces than you do just all that raw strength. If your optic is light, you want a lightweight carry rifle. In those cases, my gosh, your ultralight rings are also a perfect answer.
Absolutely, yeah. Those ultralight rings are really modeled. For a while, we were doing the Mountain Tech rings with you as a co-brand, and you know, you reached out and said we'd really like to have our own rings. So we designed those based on the same platform. So they're 70-75 aluminum, stainless hardware, and about as light as you can make a ring, but still stand up to. I'm running them on my 300 Win Mag, which is a Traverse, and I'm running them on my 6.5 PRC, which is a Ridgeline, and they're just the ultimate ring if you're building a lightweight rig. You know, you don't.
They are,
buy a lightweight gun and then load it with a bunch of heavy steel, unless you feel like emotionally you need to.
Yeah, the first set I got, I put them on my rifle that's chambered in 28 Nosler. I carry that rifle a lot, and they have absolutely been flawless in performance for 2 years. And I've even been able to go on some pretty neat hunts with that gun. and they've served me very, very well. So they're a great solution if that's what your intended purpose of the rifle is, no doubt about it.
Right.
So we've got a good heavy ring for a heavy optic. Let's talk a little bit about, when we get back to these rings, Randy, the bubble level on this ring. Why is that important on a ring for the intended purpose of long-range precision shooting? Why is that an advantage?
Well, the anti-cant level, or whatever we want to call it, the bubble level that goes on that firearm on the scope, when you're out at the range and you're shooting 100, 200, 300 yards, that bullet's just going, in a nice straight trajectory and hitting the target. But if you're canted to the right or the left and you're flinging it out there 800, 1,200 yards, it's going to curve along with it, and you're just not going to hit the target that you keep aiming at if your scope's not level. For me,
you're exactly right. I liken it a little bit to a hook and a slice in golf.
Yeah.
And I've even, isn't that a pretty good analogy?
No, I just don't golf, so I get it. But yeah.
I don't either. I just pretend I do.
100%.
One day at the range, Randy, I intentionally canted my rifle, and the point of impact at 500 yards was absolutely visible. It was discernible.
Right.
And so having that built-in level, and it's in the right place, if you just get used to opening your eye and making sure you're level, you're going to be a lot more consistent, especially at extended ranges.
I find that level with both eyes open actually floats like it's floating on your reticle. So you don't have to get off. You don't have to look at your pick rail. You don't have to move around. You just stay on the gun with both eyes open, and that little bubble is floating right in the middle of your reticle.
Yeah, it's in a great place, and it does a great job. It's a neat benefit in that scope, in that ring.
Huge.
Let's talk a little bit about your cantilever mount for ARs. I run quite a few of these myself too, Randy. You've sent me a couple of them.
Yep.
And they're on ARs that I've run pretty hard. ARs tend to sometimes to be a firearm that's maybe treated a little rougher duty, and maybe not quite as babied as somebody's rifle.
Right. So most AR, we'll just say an AR-15 or a 223 style platform, typically have 13 slots on the upper, and there's just not enough room to mount most scopes. It's crowding your face. It's higher than you would anticipate doing it. And so that forward cantilever allows you to run a 1-6, a 1-8, a 1-10. But you can also throw your 3-9 on it and run it perfectly well. And then they're at a certain height, again, where that rear peep and front post was if we went way, way, way back in AR time, because there's virtually no drop in the comb. So when you shoulder up, you're on the rifle, looking really high over that rail. And I get a lot of guys that buy medium rings and low rings because they think they're a 1-6 can, and it will fit, but they can't look through it because they can't cock their head down low enough. So we call it an MSR ideal height, but it really is where it should be for most shooters for an AR platform.
I agree. In fact, the vast majority will find that that's exactly where it should be. And one of the things that I tell people, and you alluded to it, Randy, without that cantilever or that offset, in many cases, you'll be unable on a conventional AR upper, you'll be unable to reach the proper eye relief in your optic. Just by design, they're not ready for that. And that cantilever mount allows you to do that.
Yeah, we do talk to some people that have a ring out on their handguard, and we just caution them that a point of impact shift is coming. So you need to get it all back on the upper, or something's going to move and they're going to miss steel, they're going to miss an animal, whatever, they're going to miss their target. Yeah.
Let's just say that mounting option is less than ideal.
It's not even an option, but I'm not there to babysit.
It's a disaster waiting to happen is what it really is.
100%.
So the cantilever mount solves all of those issues, and by gosh, it's just something so simple. Put it on your upper, mount your optic properly, and you're good to go.
Go to the range. Yep, 100%. Yeah.
So great products, and like I said, I've been kind of mean to mine, and they're still hanging in there. So thank you again for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Those are some of the products we're going to offer through our web store. We feel really, really great about them. They're wonderful products, and we have no hesitation whatsoever to having the Christensen Arms logo on those rings. So let's, with the products we've talked about now, let's jump in, Randy, to some of the questions that have been pushed up to us.
Sure.
What are the most common mistakes made when installing an optic mount?
Not using the proper torque or not using a torque wrench, in my mind, is huge. We have a lot of customers that over tighten their rings or they over tighten their bases and break a screw off in their receiver. And really understanding that Loctite is a lubricant, and you can easily tighten everything up too tight and come down and smash your scope tube or cause other issues. So that's probably the biggest thing to help people with is read the instructions, use the scope manufacturer suggested torque, and if they can't emotionally get over the fact they have to use Loctite, they need to dial that torque back 50% from what the manufacturer recommends.
Yeah, I agree. I hesitate to admit this on TV, but I'm guilty of the over torquing a scope tube, an optic tube, and causing damage to the scope.
Yeah.
A lot of years ago, I just figured tighter was better, and I over torqued 2 caps on it wasn't a real expensive scope, but lesson learned. It is very, very easy to over torque those and cause damage. You're not helping yourself by making them too tight.
Right. It's frustrating. The good thing is 90% of the time that scope's still going to work just fine. The bad side is you just dented your $400, $700, $1,700 scope, and it's hard to get out. It's like scratching a brand new car, right? So
that's right. Yeah, it's easily avoided. And the great thing about the products that we offer, we've worked together and printed a very, very detailed and accurate instruction card that's in the clamshell package. And so if they'll just take that out and open it up and read what we recommend in there, they'll get away with a lot of stuff that will be mistakes that would be otherwise made.
Right.
So, yep. So some other mistakes, maybe you don't have the right height, and you want to make sure when you mount your rings that you allow yourself enough latitude to make proper eye relief. When you shoulder that firearm, you need to see a full field of view, and if your rings aren't properly installed and you won't allow you that adjustment, then you could have that challenge too.
Absolutely. Every scope, in my mind, you need to have a good cheek weld and you need to have good eye relief, or you're going to be moving on the gun and it's going to be difficult to actually shoot the groups that you thought you could shoot if you're not on the gun consistently. So absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those 2 factors will make you a much more consistently accurate shooter than if you'd have those not right.
Right.
So.
You can put too high rings on it and put a cheek riser like the MPR has built in, or a Velcro leather. As long as you have a good cheek weld, the gun's going to perform properly. Right. Otherwise, you're going to be lifting off and you're going to be sliding on the stock, and you're just not going to be comfortable and consistent.
Correct. And consistency is the key word to that.
100%.
Sure. So, yep. So another question we get, and you guys probably do, Randy, do I need to lap my rings? Do my rings need to be lapped before I can install my optic?
If they're aluminum rings and you really, it doesn't hurt to lap them, but it's not necessary to lap them. Lapping kind of came about many, many years ago when CNC precision receivers weren't where they used to be, and you've got base holes out of alignment and different things like that, and you actually had to align the rings to each other.
Yes.
Most modern firearm machining has a nice consistent 4 holes or however that manufacturer does it. And whether you're using a 2-piece base or a 1-piece rail, things are really well aligned. You can't lap our steel rings because they're just too sticky and grippy. You really can't remove that finish. Sometimes I'll lap like a Mountain Tech pair, maybe just 5 or 10 passes to take off any potential edge that might be there that I can't really see, that I can't really feel. It makes me feel a little bit better about it, but it is 100% not necessary. You can bolt it together, go to the range and shoot the same group, whether you lap it for a half hour or not. And if you overlap it, sometimes you can't actually tighten the scope anymore.
You're exactly right. Yeah. Overlapping can make those rings not usable, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. And that mirrors exactly what my philosophy is. With the modern precision machining techniques available, it is not absolutely necessary to lap rings. In the old days, if you were to lap rings, in some cases, you could tell that those rings by themselves were not properly aligned.
Yeah.
But with the modern manufacturing, gosh, those rings seem to just line up real well.
Yay.
And with that, yeah, that's right. Kudos to you guys.
Agreed.
So yeah, a little bit maybe wouldn't hurt, but it is not necessary to lap every set of rings, new modern rings to your optic.
Yeah, 100%.
So, especially, I mean, I figure with me, there are a lot of considerations that will affect my action way more than lapping my rings. Old eyes, you know, bad trigger finger. So I got a lot of other things more critical to work on than lapping my rings.
Yeah. How high was the hill I just climbed? You know, it all factors in.
That's right. Yes, sir. The next question we have pushed up to us, Randy, as you own a ridgeline, as you looked at your ridgeline, what did you use to set your ridgeline up for an optic?
Sure. So my ridgeline, for actually the way that I carry it, I set up to be a lightweight hunter. We're out in Oregon. We carry our guns a lot. And if you're really lucky, we see something, but otherwise you just carry your gun a lot and don't shoot it. I went with a two-piece steel base set. And the reason I went with the two-piece bases instead of a pick rail is because for that firearm with a hinged floor plate, I'm loading all my rounds down through the top, and I didn't want to have to finagle that round over the top of the receiver and under the pick rail each round as I cram them down into the magazine. And then I went with a pair of Mountain Tech rings because they're super light, and I went with a reasonably lightweight 2-12 scope, and that's my hunter. It took a great outfit this year. If I was going to set that up to do some intermediate long range, I wanted to maybe I want to get into it and I want to convert my ridgeline, I'd probably throw a 20 MOA rail on it and run a higher power scope. And that's just going to allow me to dial it at more distance, the distance that the cartridge can handle, but not for hunting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And that sounds perfect. That's, as we give advice here at the factory, our advice mirrors what you just suggested. The intended purpose as a hunting rifle, we recommend exactly what you just talked about. You bring up an interesting point though, Randy. A lot of our rifles, some of our rifles, the NPR, for example, will actually ship with a one-piece optic rail mounted to the receiver. A lot of people out there, though, Jeff included, on occasion will use a two-piece base like you did. Let's talk about the advantages of one and the other. How do you go about making that final decision, one-piece rail or two-piece bases?
Sure. And I'll just kind of use specifically Christensen arms. You guys have done a great job on dimensioning the upper or the top of your receiver. So almost every scope fits on either mounting platform. But maybe I have a really expensive scope where I want to be able to bounce it between a couple different firearms, Picatinny rail all day long. I want to shoot anything long range, or I want to dial, and I think I want a 20 MOA. That's definitely a Picatinny rail. My Traverse came with Picatinny rail, factory installed, and that is exactly how it lives right now. I left that on. Two-piece bases are a little bit more also what I would consider a classic rifle style. So don't necessarily want a Picatinny rail on my high grade Model 70, right? It's not really, it doesn't suit the gun.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it's just pure emotion. I mean, shooters do the darndest things, but you build your gun your way, right? That's why you bought it. So some people want it tactical. Some people just wish that the scope would hover over the gun. So
that's right. And we have not figured out how to make that happen yet, by the way.
No, it's not super glue.
As I look at that question, a couple of things come to my mind. A one-piece optic rail, very rigid, very secure, and like you mentioned, if you get a declinated rail, then it gives you some built-in elevation as you decide to dial for a ballistic solution. Right. So there's a lot of advantages to that one-piece optic rail. The two-piece bases, and a one-piece rail or two-piece bases, I think you would agree they're equally accurate as long as they're installed properly.
I agree 100%. I would say if we took two factory guns and set one up one way and set one up the other way, they would shoot the exact same group all day, every day. Another thing about a pick rail is that there are certain rings and certain accessories that will only fit a Picatinny rail. So if you happen to have made that purchase, you want to run a red dot on top of your bolt gun or whatever the case is, you're probably going to need that that mil spec style 1913 slot spacing,
Yes, sir.
where rings will fit on virtually either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another consideration, and it's one of mine, if I've got a hunting rifle and I need most access possible to the chamber, to the port, the receiver, to load and unload the rifle from an internal magazine, the two-piece bases allow a little more access to that opening in the receiver as opposed to a one-piece rail.
Right. And then take your MPR sitting right there. It's magazine fed. You never need to reach into the top. And
Exactly.
a ring will never affect ejecting live or spent rounds. They're formatted and spec'd so that that's not an issue. But if you don't have a magazine, it's that follow-up shot that, you know, if the first 4 or 5 didn't do it, whatever, then you may need more. So
yeah, yeah. So those are considerations. They'll both work really well for you, though.
Right. Personal. Yeah.
Next question. This is a good one. I've thought about this myself, Randy. One of the questions pushed up to us talks about a vertical ring and a horizontal split ring. The advantages to both. What's your experience there? What do you guys have both, obviously?
Yeah, we have both. So, you know, originally Warne started out with the same quick detach ring that was Kimber of Oregon, and that is a vertical split ring. The late Leonard Brownell helped Jack Warne design that style. But if we fast forward all the way to today, the way the vertical split works is that you tighten the bottom and it tightens onto the rail or bases. When you come back and tighten the tops to a given torque, you're closing around that scope tube a lot like a hose clamp. And horizontal split rings are, although they're like the industry standard out there, but they are more like 2 radiused vice jaws. And when you tighten them down, you know, you go in an X pattern back and forth to a certain torque to tighten them down. Again, same group all day, every day. When I started and up until maybe 6 years ago, all we had was vertical split. And we knew that, kind of like beta and VHS or anything else, we knew we had to do a horizontal split because there are certain people that just looked at them and said, nope, don't know what it is. That's not what my dad used, whatever it was. So we now have both, and the horizontal splits are selling phenomenally.
They are. And you know, again, it's just like the two-piece bases or one-piece rail. Regardless of the ring style you choose, the key element to being accurate is just to make sure that the installation is proper.
Right. Yeah.
If you do everything correctly and torque it correctly, they will both serve you very, very well.
Right. You're going to be the same group again, either way. And then the only thing I'll say about the vertical split is it's a cosmetic thing. I happen to love them. They just make the firearm look like it's got some jewelry on it. They're not so big and bulky, but other people hate them, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yep. They're both available and they'll both work well for you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Next question, Randy. I'm trying not to wear you out here. We don't want to run you off for our next time when we invite you again. But is there a preferred installation method that works best for ring alignment and even torque? You hear people all the time about superstitions and this one first and this one last, and make sure it's pushed all the way to the back.
Good. So I would say make sure it's pushed all the way to the muzzle. You want to push all the way forward. What's happening under recoil is that gun's racing back at you, and the scope and therefore the mounts want to stay where they are. So technically they want to slide forward. So we're just preceding them forward in the slot. The recoil key on rings isn't made to fill the slot. It's more made to stop it from moving forward. And then I would put the scope in it, get my caps on it so that nothing tragic happens, and start leveling my reticle and getting my eye relief where I think I want it, and then kind of get a little pressure on all the screws and just do an X pattern on each cap until I hit whatever the scope manufacturer's torque recommendation is, and then bore sight and go to the range. I don't do a lot of dilly-dallying unless I run into a problem, and I run into a problem if I was doing some basement gunsmith Mauser 98 from the 40s or 50s, right? So today we're not going to run into the typical problems that would cause you to have to do more work.
Exactly. Yep. Over the years, I've found myself doing it almost exactly like you mentioned. When I tighten my rings, I do it incrementally, and typically I do it in 3 steps with 5 inch-pounds in between each of those 3 incremental steps. And it just seems like those rings settle onto the cap better, and it just works out well. The one thing I would tell people, and this is just based on my personal experience again, once you do that initial torquing, it's just like the lug nuts on a trailer. It doesn't hurt after you've shot 50 or 100 rounds just to go back and confirm that the initial torque values are still there.
For sure. I agree. And the only thing on that, which is 100% true, is if I were installing a base or a rail, I would absolutely use a little removable thread locker and not exceed the torque specs again, because I've seen a lot of firearms after that same recoil, when you shoot, there's a harmonic vibration that you can't see, but it happens in your gun, and it loves to back screws out. And if you've got loose base screws and you're trying to shoot a decent group and it's just going everywhere, it's the first thing to look at is that your base screws may have come loose.
It is, yes, sir. And that's a frustrating thing. You start to wonder if it's the gun or the ammunition, and sometimes it's just a simple matter of checking your torque, making sure nothing's worked loose in the vibration of the active shooting, and just confirm that. It's simple and easy to do. I've even gone to the point, Randy, where I was so convinced that I had to just kind of reset that I removed everything and remounted it, and the gun went right back to shooting like it should have. So
right.
So yeah, absolutely.
Good.
So those are some suggestions we would certainly offer everybody. Last question today, Randy. If somebody's brand new to long range shooting, what would you recommend that they look for in their rings and mounts on their rifle?
Absolutely. The first thing, if they, it's funny, if I can just preface that a little bit, we get calls on long range shooting all the time. And for some people, long range is 400 yards. And so that's a long ways. But if we're talking 800 to 1,200 yards or whatever that case is, I think they really need to research the optic that they want to mount before they go out and buy anything else. Providing they already own that firearm, I would clearly recommend a Picatinny rail with at least 20 MOA, and make sure that the optic can dial, because using Kentucky windage or holdovers at that distance is going to be iffy. So
less than ideal.
Yeah. And then really look at rings that are similar to your heavy duty rings, that have either the level or a data card holder or more, because they really need to be, if they want to compete, they've got to be behind that gun, and they need to be able to do everything from the shooting position, kind of like driving in a car. You can reach everything ergonomically without having to get off your hold to adjust your firearm.
Exactly. Yep. And so you would look for a few different things in a ring for a long range precision guy than you would a hunting rifle. And for us, and probably you too, part of the reason we offer the modern precision rifle and the BA Tactical and the TFM and even the ELR, long range precision shooting is a very fast growing demographic for firearms. A lot of interest in that, and it's continuing to grow and even grow more. So we're going to have to deal with that. And when you can incorporate strength and features like a level and a data card holder, those rings will do a much better job for you as a long range shooter than just a standard set of hunting rings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And again, it comes all back to the intended purpose of the rifle, and then getting the best product to help you achieve what you're trying to do with that gun.
Right. I had day one a modern precision rifle on order, and I talked to you guys maybe a month into the order and changed it to a Ridgeline, because the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I just want to carry this gun in the woods and in the open prairies, and I wanted a traditional stock. I just wanted a nice lightweight hunting rifle. Mm-hmm. And I kick myself, I'm probably going to order one, but I've got way too many firearms right now, so I feel like I have to sell something so it will fit in my safe. But that's a great rifle. A couple of guys that I work with here at Warne are running that firearm and love it.
It sure has been good for us, especially for the people who want to kind of hybridize or cross over from long range precision during the summer and maybe carry it on a trip, carry it in the mountains with them for one fall hunt or whatever. Right. It crosses over fairly well and does both pretty amazing.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Randy, listen, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. We appreciate the quality that you bring with your Warne products. We'd love to have our Christensen logo on them. And to be honest with you, a lot of people would buy whatever ring we offered if it just had our logo on it. But we're proud to have your rings and your quality in that package. So again, you're a busy guy. We thank you very much for being here with us today. Thanks for what you've shared with everybody, and we're grateful to have you as a partner.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff. It's great to talk to you. I got to come out and visit with you and walk through a little bit of the factory, and great product. I own 2. We probably own 15 plus Christensens within the Warne group, and we buy them just like everybody else does. So don't think we're trading rings, anybody, because that's not the case. It's not how it works.
We wish we could work that out, don't we?
I can send rings, but I get it. Guns are different. So
yeah. And for my part, I'd love to get up into the Pacific Northwest someday and just stop by your place too. So.
You're welcome anytime, and then go to the beach and maybe fish a little bit or whatever you're into.
You can't shoot at the beach, Randy. I'm out on the beach.
Not legally.
You get sand in your gun if you go too far onto the beach. So.
Yeah, there's no app for that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Randy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Randy for being with us today. We appreciate what he brings to our company. They're a great brand partner for us, and we value them greatly. And the thing is, at Christensen Arms, we have used and continue to use the Warne products on our firearms with tremendous success. If we didn't, we wouldn't offer them co-branded and offer them on our web store. Our name's on the ring now, and we're proud to have those on there. So we're confident you'll enjoy them as a product too. They're very, very good quality. Thanks again, everybody. We appreciate you being a part of our events. It's our goal as a company to always have something new and productive and valuable to you. You give up your time to share with us. We feel a priority to share something valuable that you can use when we're done here. So thanks again, everybody. Remember, shoot carefully, be safe always, know your backstop, involve young shooters, and shoot often. Thanks, everybody. Take care.